Today we're taking a look at what the Bible has to say about the God, that is plural. We're going to kind of be just breaking through the surface. We're not going to go very deep. We're just going to lay a foundational framework, look at three primary biblical texts that introduce us to these characters in Scripture, and we're going to begin exploring why it matters. My name is Lee. Thanks for tuning into my channel, which is your online resource for growing in confidence as a believer. Let's dive into it. All right, so we're going to dive into a topic that's highly, highly interesting. It's probably one of my favorite topics in the Bible, mainly because I grew up never hearing about it. And so since learning about it over the last 3-ish years or so, I've become incredibly interested. And I want to share that this particular teaching you're going to hear today is highly, highly inspired, almost completely copied, full transparency, from one of my favorite Bible scholars. His name is Dr. Michael Heiser. And he does a much better job at explaining all this than I could ever hope or dream to. So I'm going to actually leave in the description a 8-minute or so video where he talks about the same thing we're going to talk about today, except he's much smarter than I am on these topics. But I encourage you, I'll also leave in the description a link to his website. He has a couple of them. If you are a Bible nerd, this individual has shaped my thinking over the last 3 years or so, 4 years or so. His scholarly works and his research is absolutely mind-blowing. He's a lover of Jesus. It's nothing crazy or heretical, okay? It's just really well done research. And it explores parts of the Bible that, quite frankly, the American church skips over. And so today we're going to begin by kicking off in Psalm 82. That's where I want to begin. So let's dive into that now. It says this: God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. Now, some translations will take this word right here, gods, and translate it to rulers or something a little less sketchy, if you will. And I appreciate the ESV. I think also the CSB translate this as gods. And we're going to take a look at the Hebrew word, and it's going to become very clear to you what the author wrote here. So first, I want to look at God, okay? And we can see corresponding down here. I apologize for the blinking screen. Looks like we're going to have some of that today. But we can see that this is Elohim, okay? God has taken his place, okay? Elohim. Now, a little grammar lesson on Hebrew. This I am at the end of a word is kind of like our S. It makes a word plural. And so we've got Elohim, and I'm going to break this down a little bit more. Has taken his place in the divine council in the midst of the gods. Let's take a look at that Hebrew word. Oh, it's also Elohim. So we have Elohim twice in the same verse. Okay? So if you grew up hearing some of the teachings I did, you probably heard that Elohim was the plural form of the word God, and in part they would be right in saying that. The part where they err is they say that, particularly referring to the book of Genesis, when we have the creation story and we have the Elohim creating and the Elohim saying, "Let us create man in our image." Who would God be talking to plurally? Let us. Well, a lot of times what pastors and theologians will say is that's the Trinity speaking. Well, there's a problem with that. It's not at all in line with Hebrew grammar or the Hebrew worldview. And we're going to look at a couple other biblical texts that shed some light onto the worldview of the authors. But let's get back to Psalm 82 first. We have Elohim twice in the same particular verse, okay? So this word Elohim, the im typically makes a word plural, okay, in the Hebrew language. However, in the English, we have words like sheep, where we don't know if it's plural or singular because that word can be used for both. Elohim's the same way. At times it can be used singular, and at times it can be used plural. The way we would tell if sheep is being used in a singular or plural fashion is by the rest of the sentence. So the sheep is grazing in the field, or the sheep are grazing in the field. This word is and this word are indicators that let us know if sheep is plural or singular. So in the same way, we have those indicators in the Hebrew language as well. Let's take a look back at Psalm 82 and see what we're talking about. Okay, God has taken his place, and this is going to tell us here how the word Elohim is being used with this capital G God. Is it singular or plural? And we can say singular, absolute here. His place, singular place, right? Now let's take a look at this bottom one for God's lowercase g. This word midst right here actually tells us that this is plural, because you don't have a midst of one thing. It takes two or more to create in the midst of something. And so that's kind of our indicator there that the lowercase g gods is plural, while the capital G God is singular, both Elohim. So I hope that's starting to kind of make a little bit of sense now. The question becomes, who are these gods that are in the divine council? Who are these gods that that the capital G God has taken his place in the midst of them, and he judges them? And so to explore that, we want to look back at Psalm 82 just briefly. Okay. It says, God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. So let's keep reading a little further, and we're going to see why and for what God is judging this group of gods. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. And they have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. And we're going to jump down to verse 6, and go ahead and read it, but I'm going to hit on it a little bit more in a minute. I said, you are gods, sons of the Most High. Okay, so here we have this sons of the Most High language. We see that in Genesis 6. We're going to see it a couple more places in Psalm 89 and Deuteronomy 32 in just a minute. All of you, nevertheless, like men, you shall die. You fall like any prince. And so here we have the ultimatum, the sentence, if you will, that God, the God of these gods, right? He is giving them a sentence. He's the death sentence, ultimately, for what exactly? Well, they're not doing what they're supposed to. They're not judging the nations of the earth, right? Fairly and righteously. Okay, they're letting the world become corrupt. They're leading the world in corruption. There's a lot of things going on. Let's take a look at Deuteronomy 32 for some more information here. So I'm going to open it up. Now, this is what's called the Song of Moses, and he's basically giving this. He's right about to die, and he's giving this kind of a speech, particularly to the next generation who were very, very young, if even born at all, coming out of Egypt. And this is what he says: remember the days of old. In other words, don't forget them. Don't forget who God is. Remember, God has brought you out of Egypt. But I want you to remember even more. I want you to remember how the world was formed and how it started and all of these things and how we got to where we are in this fallen, corrupt state. Remember those things. This is what he's getting at. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. And you're too young to remember. So this is what I want you to do. Ask your father, and he will show you. Your elders, and they will tell you. Verse 8 is Moses giving a snapshot as to the particular things he wants them to keep in mind. And this is what happened in the days of old. the Most High gave the nations their inheritance. All right. So the Most High, El Elyon, is the way to describe that. Okay. We have a worldview where there's multiple gods, but God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the God of Israel, is the God Most High. He's over all. He is supreme. Okay. He's the God that created all the rest. And so they're making that distinction here. When Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the people according to the numbers of the sons of God. Okay, he's referring to Babel here when God came and confused the language of all the people, and he fixed the borders of people. So we have nations and people and all this, but he fixed the borders according to the number of the sons of God, is what Moses is saying. So in other words, he gave the world over to be judged by these sons of God. So these sons of God had, nations, right? So each nation had a God that was supposed to be a steward of that land. At least this was the worldview, right? That the Hebrews had and Moses was getting at here. And so what we see in Psalm 82 is those gods have done a terrible job. They've led the world into rebellion. They've led the world into worshiping them, okay, and not the creator. And they've done a terrible job. And so in Psalm 82, we see this death sentence being given to the sons of God. We can see that some of the actions of the sons of God are displayed in Genesis 6, okay? And so this is what's happening in Psalm 82. God is in the midst of the council, casting judgment on all of these gods that have led the world into rebellion, idolatry, sin of all sorts and all kinds. They've led the entire race of humanity away from Yahweh God. So what happens is at Babel, God basically creates the borders of the people according to the sons of God. At this particular time, God, the God of all gods, Yahweh God, does not have a people. He doesn't have a nation. And so that's why we get into the creation of Israel, where God creates from a covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the people of Israel. And this people, this nation, belongs to Yahweh God. Okay. And so I hope this is all making sense. And this is the picture that the ancients had as their worldview. So the nations, there was a spiritual being placed in somewhat of a stewardship role over the nations. God didn't have a nation until he created Israel, and Israel became his nation. And then later on, we have more scriptures that tell us he will actually inherit the entire world. And that's what we see through Christ, right? Christ then opened the gate. He is the gate, rather, for the entire world, Jew and Gentile alike, to come in and make God Most High their God and turn from the gods of this world and the wickedness of this world, from their idols and the things they worship, and then to worship the God of Israel, the God Most High. So I want to look at one more verse that will continue to shed some light on this topic. That's Psalms 89, verses 5 through 7. So let's dive into that real quick. It says this: "Let the heavens praise your wonders, O Lord, your faithfulness and the assembly of the holy ones." Okay, there's that phrase, the holy ones. "For who in the skies can be compared to the Lord? Who among the heavenly beings is like the Lord, a God greatly to be feared in the council of the holy ones." Okay, so we can see this language continuing on: holy ones, heavenly beings, the council of the holy ones. Okay, so the sons of God, B'nai Elohim, is the Hebrew, and I probably butchered it a little bit there, but that's that common phrase to describe these holy ones, the sons of God, and so on and so forth. Now, there are other heavenly beings, right? We have malach, which are messenger, angel, things of that nature. So we're specifically looking at these gods, these Elohim, these sons of God, these holy ones, okay? And so right now, and again, I'm still a novice to a lot of this, compared to guys like Dr. Michael Heiser, but I'm not under the impression that the council are the fallen sons of God or the non-fallen sons of God. I think the council was when God Most High was casting judgment on these sons of God, that he was in the midst of a council doing that. And so I think they're different entities, if you will. Okay, so why are we talking about this? I just wanted to break the ice on this because I didn't want to dive too deep into this whole world. Maybe we'll continue to talk about it in future videos, but I think this is an incredibly important topic. One, because it's in our Bibles and it's under taught in the American church, but it matters. It's like a critical piece of context and a critical piece to the puzzle that is the story of the Bible, is understanding the reality of the realm that is not material, the spirit realm, the unseen realm, whatever language you want to put to it, the realm God resides in. God is not the only spirit being that exists in that realm, but he is God supreme over everything that exists in that realm. And so I don't want there to be any confusion when we're using terms like gods. This isn't like there's a competition between God, the God of Israel, right? Our God as believers, Jesus Christ. It's not like there's a competition between God Most High and these gods. There's not a competition. It's not even close. Like, God is the creator of all beings, whether in the spirit realm or material realm. But there seems to be biblically this hierarchy in the spirit realm, right, of the beings that are there. And the sons of God or these other Elohim gods would seem to be higher up the food chain, given more responsibility, and namely to steward the nations of the earth. And we see a group of them were rebels, right? And they solicited the worship of the earth. Others perhaps were just poor stewards and didn't judge the nations rightly, which we can see the description there briefly in Psalm 82. And so there's a whole lot of mystery surrounding this. There's a whole lot to be unpacked still. There's certainly a ton I need to learn regarding all of this. But this is something I wanted to crack the ice on and maybe get your wheels turning. And we shouldn't be afraid of Scripture, right? This isn't some weird Lee's talking about crazy ideas now. No, I'm just reading the Bible and I'm interpreting the Bible by using the Bible. And so we shouldn't be afraid of these things. We should look at them and address them. And it doesn't change the gospel message. It doesn't change who God is. And I think so many times we start talking about other gods and the existence of these things, and we don't like it. One, it's weird, but two, because it's like, does this threaten who Jesus is? And does this threaten the gospel? And does this threaten who God is? Absolutely not. It actually adds weight to it in a beautiful way. But we can't be scared of it. We can't just shut it. We can't just breeze over it. We need to know the story. We need to know how we got here, and we need to know where we're going. And so I hope that today has been insightful for you. I hope it's been interesting. It's added value. I hope it hasn't been too confusing as I try to unpack some of this. I do encourage you to go visit those links and visit Dr. Michael Heiser's videos and materials. I'll leave, again, a specific YouTube video that's way shorter than this and concise. Basically communicating everything I did today, but way better and way shorter. I'll leave a link to his website, and I'll leave a link to his overall YouTube channel. I encourage you to go indulge in that. It will enrich your faith and your biblical literacy. But without further ado, until next time, God bless.